Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining our webinar. My name is Rutger van der Zanden. I lead our work streams on heating and cooling, as well as one on integrated energy strategies to which this webinar relates. My co-host is Marianne Heinrich. She is the Director of Energy, and you'll hear much more from her later. Peter, feel free to go to the next slide. Thank you. So yeah, very pleased to have you all with us today. We'll be focusing our session on how to future-proof your energy strategy through value chain collaboration. But before we get going, we've got a sort of number of housekeeping items to go through. So the session is being recorded, and all participants are muted for the moment. Slides, as well as the recordings of both the morning and the afternoon session, will be made available on our website. And we request that we encourage you to ask questions, but we request that you do so through the chat function, and we will try and address those later on in the session. And with regards to antitrust, I mean, we very much welcome all thoughts and questions, but ask you to be mindful of antitrust regulations. So yeah, please prohibit from speaking on commercially sensitive issues, such as pricing, cost, bid strategies, future capacity additions, output decisions, etc. Right, before we get going with the event in earnest, I'd like to ask you to go to menti.com in your web browser or on your phone, and let us know how you heard about this event. So if you could go to menti.com and use the code 616276, then and if you could let us know how you heard from us, that would be great. So either it's through a personalized email, the WBCSD website, social media, partner network, or others. I'll give us a few seconds to set this up. Just so you know, we will be asking a few more questions using this Mentimeter format. So this is a great one to set it up. So I think we'll allow for a few more seconds. I imagine there's a few late joiners who will join momentarily. So we'll give it a few more seconds, and then we'll go to the next slide. All right, we will get back to this. Peter, please go to the next slide. Thank you. So yeah, on today's speakers, very pleased with the lineup that we have for this morning. So I'll run through it quickly, but we will do proper introductions as and when our speakers come to present. So we have Maria Mendelucci, our Managing Director of Climate and Energy here at the WBCSD, who also recently became the CEO of the Women Business Coalition. We have Helen Hudson, the Global Head of Sustainable Manufacturing from Unilever. Carol Gobczynski, the Head of Climate and Energy at Inca Group. Marco Gazzino, the Head of Innovability at NOx, as well as the Director of Energy at WBCSD, Marianne Heinrich. So before I Before I hand over, I'll do a sort of 60-second introduction to WBCSD. Knowing this is a public webinar and some people might not be familiar. So we're a global CEO-led member organization of roughly 200 forward-thinking businesses. We are united around a common vision, which we have articulated on the screen, as well as a common belief that sustainability and business success are not only mutually connected, but actually reinforce each other. So if you look at our membership on the next slide, we have approximately 200 members across 18 industries, and these range from energy and healthcare to consumer staples and IT. And it's very much a global organization with our members being headquartered in over 40 different countries. If we look at the focus areas, we span a wide spectrum. I think most of these, we're focusing on system transformation, as we call it, sort of amongst six different program areas. Most are self-explanatory, such as circular economy, cities and mobility, climate and energy, food and nature, people, the people program, and redefining value looks at how we measure, report, or disclose company information and performance to capital markets. I very much encourage you to look at the website for more detail on these programs. So coming to the agenda, we have a full program for the session, but Maria will kick us off with some scene setting, articulating the business benefits of value chain collaboration. Then we will have our three speakers share insights and thoughts and best practices on their journey so far and the challenges that they are going through. And then Mariana will lead a moderated discussion on how to develop an integrated energy strategy. And we'll wrap up with a quick call to action. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Maria Mendelucci, the MD of our climate and energy team and the CEO of the We Mean Business Coalition.
Thank you, Rutger. Thank you, Mariana, for organizing this webinar, and a pleasure to be with all of you today. We're living really exciting times, and it's difficult to say that in the context of COVID, given how difficult the last few months are and how hard the coronavirus is hitting in many countries. So I hope you are all well and that you take care during the summer period so that we can control the pandemic. So even if the pandemic has taken quite a lot of attention, obviously, and the relief exercise as well, one of the things that have surprised me on this period is how strongly the business community has to step up and say, well, we need to fight against this pandemic, but there is a biggest pandemic, which is climate change, that is not going to go away, and that we need to make sure that as we build back better. So as we put in place these stimulus packages and recovery packages, we include climate change related activities so that we build a future that is more resilient to climate change. I don't think I need to reiterate in this group the urgency of climate change. The report, the 1.5 report back in 2018 made it very clear that 2 degrees was not enough. We had to keep temperature below 1.5, at 1.5 degrees. And this is not going to be easy. But this means that we need to be net zero emissions by 2050. And in that sense, many companies have stepped forward and say, yes, we are committed to do this by 2050 or earlier. And so that's quite remarkable in the community. We also are seeing that the financial markets are looking at clean investments and are noticing that these companies are outperforming their markets. We have some interesting analysis that you can see as well on our webpage, on recent blogs in that respect. The financial community is also transitioning to the clean and to fight climate change through the way that they allocate their investment, because it makes business sense, because it reduces their risks. That's really interesting times. And then I was quite impressed, and I read this quote in one of the many emails that I've received these days, where the Secretary General of the United Nations in the International Energy Summit last week said it very clear. And let me quote him. He said, "Let us commit to no new coal today and end all external financial of coal in developing countries. Coal has no place in COVID-19 recovery. And I thought that was remarkable, and I think I have never heard a leader being so clear about this. And so now when we turn, to the business sector, what has happened in the recent months? Well, we have seen that many companies have doubled down their efforts on the climate side, accelerating some of their investments. We know that investing in clean technologies, brings more jobs, and that is a key element now on the recovery phase. How can we bring back jobs, and how we can come back to an economy that is more healthy in some ways. COVID-19 has shown the interconnections and the impact that systemic change can have. And so, as I said before, financial institutions and companies, are seeing it at first hand that, the coronavirus that started in a Chinese market, now it has become a global pandemic. Climate change is going to be the same, but with more impact. So companies are setting, there's around more than 900 companies that have set science-based targets following the SBTi initiatives. More than 300 have said that they're going to be net zero by 2050. Many of our member companies are pointing in that direction, and even the ones that have a more difficult journey, like BP, Shell, and Total, have joined the ranks of the companies to achieve net zero by 2050. And this is not all. We have lots of companies that are committing to RE100, being 100% renewables, EV100, so electric vehicles, 100% use of electric vehicles. And now we have seen many new initiatives like the one we launched at WBCSD, SOS 1.5, that is helping business go through the business transformation that is required to get to net zero. So business are not only doing, they're also raising their voice, which I find that also is quite extraordinary in these times, because we have all been hit by the pandemic, and so that's where most of our hearts and focus was. But even in that, many companies have been able to step out and also see the bigger picture. We have accounted around 1,200 companies that have signed different letters asking governments to build back better, to the point that the European Union has made this their own word as part of the new Green Deal. Boris Johnson also included into the new programs that the UK government is pushing forward, and as you know, they're also driving the COP26 meeting. And recently, just last week, we heard Joe Biden also saying we must build back better. So we're quite proud at WBCSD and also at the Women Business Coalition, because we were amongst the first to start this movement, and it has taken a lot of traction. So why reducing and decarbonizing your energy footprint individually and collectively across the value chains makes a lot of business sense. It will reduce your risk, it will make you more resilient. Energy transition provides plenty of opportunities to identify, implement, and scale new technologies, business models, and financing mechanisms that can save energy, cost, and carbon. And demand sectors must transform from being passive energy users to becoming active players in the energy system, driving the deployment of renewable and electric vehicle infrastructure, and actively managing their demand from and contributions to the grid. I think this is what really has changed in the renewable, in the energy space, is that, as many of you know, 10 years ago, we just had electricity users. No, actually now they are customers, they are clients, and they are demanding clean energy. And so that has transformed quite strongly the sector, and we have been experiencing and contributing with our work on rescale into that movement. So supply sectors are innovating to offer clean, connected, and resilient solutions, from heat as a service to electric vehicle tariff structure and off-balance sheet financing. We will hear, I'm sure we will hear more, from the leading companies that are participating in the workshop today. So you know that 70–80% of emissions of big companies come from the Scope 3 emissions, so emissions that come from the value chain. And so companies need to work with new and old partners across the value chain in ways they have never worked before. Building and growing these cross-sectoral collaborations requires expertise and takes time and energy. We have been working on this for a long time, and hence we've been pulling different initiatives to help convene and bring the value chain together. I find it's also fascinating how we're moving from competition to collaboration, because many of the companies we collaborate are competing and they want to do best. And for once, they want to do best also for climate. So there is some sort of race to zero amongst the companies, but also there is a solid and a deep understanding that there needs to be collaboration, because most of the solutions will benefit all the players, and there is really, the business case for collaboration has never been so clear. So at WBCSD, we support companies in the journey to set ambitious targets, define well thought through strategies, and support implementation through knowledge sharing and capacity building. We foster this cross-sectoral collaboration and help business build the required relationship to accelerate them and scale their impact. Big kudos to Mariana, who has been leading this activity on new energy solutions, and she has made this happen, and I'm sure she will be talking about some of the examples. Last week, for example, we published the new guidelines on low carbon energy sourcing and energy efficiency to help companies understand how they can work cross-functionally and collaboratively with their energy-related value chains to drive energy efficiency and source sustainable energy for all end users. While this might seem simple, when you're in a company that is not. We're talking about companies that are large, and so ensuring that there is an integrated energy strategy is really important. And so we're very pleased to hear from our members during this webinar how you are showing leadership to decarbonize your operations and value chain operations as well, and how you're innovating to accelerate the energy transition. So we count on you. We want to learn and hear from you. And also we want to inspire others that have not been part of this journey to join us in this effort that is led by Rutger and Mariana. Thank you very much, Rutger, and over to you.
Thank you, Maria. Much appreciated for those great insights to get us going as well. So before we move to our second speaker, I'd like to do another Menti poll to keep this session nicely interactive. So the first thing we'd like to hear is sort of about how far you are within your company to decarbonize your energy consumption, and what kind of commitments you have in place. So we have given you 5 options here, ranging from no targets to some targets to 100% decarbonized energy for your own operations, and for the truly ambitious amongst us, decarbonization of your own operations as well as those within your Scope 3. Maybe I should remind how to get on Menti. So this is www.menti.com, and you just type in the code 616276, and then this question will pop up, and you'll have to pick one of the 5 options which closely resembles the situation at your business. It works on mobile phones, laptops, any other computer. Menti.com. Thanks everybody for taking part. You can see the cross average is fairly ambitious, I would say, with good targets in place, all public, mostly public, often relating to much more than just their own operations. So that's excellent news. Excellent. I think I will leave it with that. But you know, targets are obviously just a first step to an ambitious sort of energy journey, and need to be followed up with concrete strategies and steps, which are going to outline how these targets are going to be met. So with that in mind, I would like to invite our next speaker to talk, which is Karol Gobczynski, the head of climate and energy at Inca Group, which is one of the companies that own and operate IKEA Retail. And Karol is responsible for establishing and implementing the overall climate and energy agenda at the Inca Group. So Karol, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rutger. And hello, everyone. I hope that you are healthy and your closest are doing well. After this good introduction with Maria, I think it's nothing to add when it comes to big picture, so I will try to guide you through our journey when it comes to becoming powered by 100% renewable energy. And if we go to the next slide. I'm leading the climate and energy topic within Inca Group, which is one of the strategic partners within the IKEA world, and we are operating IKEA Retail on 30 markets and representing 90% of IKEA sales. And we are committed to be powered by 100% renewable energy. And before we go into renewable energy, I would like to start with IKEA climate commitment, which you can see on the next slide. IKEA committed to reduce more greenhouse gas emissions than IKEA value chain emits while growing the IKEA business. What does it mean when we talk about value chain? Value chain emissions are connected to greenhouse gas emissions connected to materials, production, transportation, operating our buildings, our stores, customer travel and deliveries footprint, as well as the greenhouse gas emissions related to product use in people's homes, like, for example, LED bulbs. And then what is the greenhouse gas emissions connected to use of the LED bulbs in people's homes. And then last but not least is what is the footprint of end of life of the product. So we are working with the whole value chain approach when it comes to emissions. And when we go to the next slide, we said that we would like to reduce more greenhouse gas emissions than the total IKEA value chain emits, which means that we need to focus, first of all, on drastic reduction of the emissions, and to drastically reduce emissions, IKEA is focused on striving towards 100% renewable energy use across the value chain. And this is connected to production as well as operations. And then the second area, it's about carbon removal from the atmosphere and storing in land, plants and product. And the third area, it's about going beyond IKEA value chain emissions by, for example, enabling customers to consume and generate renewable energy at home, because we know that renewable energy technologies are offering amazing opportunity to reduce the energy bills. And we believe that future energy market needs to be fair and inclusive, so many people can benefit through this journey. So when we go to the next slide, I would like to share more around the renewable energy path within the Inca Group. Inca Group, which is operating the IKEA Retail, and so very much downstream operations. What we are working on, first of all, is investments in renewable energy generation on-site and off-site. And when we talk about off-sites, it's mainly about wind turbines. So we own and operate more than 500 turbines on 14 markets. And some of this electricity is used within our operations. And we are working towards being 100% use 100% renewable electricity by 2025. And this cannot be done without our partners. So our investment team is collaborating with external companies which are developing and later operating the turbines. The second area is home solar, where we said that we would like to enable people to be part of this transition and benefit through generating their own renewable energy. And today we offer home solar on 7 markets, and we are committed to offer on 30 markets by 2025. As I mentioned before, we are working towards 100% renewable electricity consumption. Today it's 66%. And our next big focus is working and engaging with new partners as well, and looking into new collaborations around securing renewable electricity consumption in markets like Russia and China, and these markets are a big focus today. Then it is as well about offering EV charging stations for customer and coworker travel. So we committed that by the end of this year, we'll offer EV chargers at all our stores, so customers can reach us with the renewable, can reach us with electric vehicles. And then we as well are working with partners to secure zero emission deliveries. And last but not least is what about energy efficiency, and improving energy efficiency is like in the core because it's enabling the reduction of the cost. And as well, there are many companies with which we are collaborating to always look for new solutions. And to amplify and work with others as well, we committed to RE100 and EV100 targets, publicly available on the website, and we are progressing towards achieving these targets. So by 2020, we'll generate more renewable energy that we consume, and we already secured the sufficient investments to achieve this target. And when we go to the next slide, this is nothing can be done without the collaboration, because everything is about finding the partners internally within the organization, and as well externally, who will help to enable as well this transition. Because as Maria said, it is a systemic change, so there is a need of high collaboration. And on the last slide, I would like to connect to climate risks, and we know that when we are planning the activities going forward, we need to incorporate the climate risks and opportunities into how we will develop the business. Therefore, we developed the 2 scenarios to see what is the impact on our business below 2 degrees, and what is the impact on our business with 4 degrees increase of global temperatures. And within the below 2 degrees scenario, we see that there are many opportunities, and that with the right investments, we can reduce the costs and build on the new opportunities. But when it comes to 4 degrees scenario, the risks are too high, and opportunities to limit the risks are very limited. And I will stop here, and looking forward to discuss more after the session.
Thank you, Carol. Great to hear you present on the myriad of ways in which the Inca Group is sort of progressing its journey, and the collaborative ways it's exploring and utilizing to get there. But I'll move on straight to our next speaker. So this is Helen Hudson. She spent over 20 years at Unilever at this point, and as the global head of sustainable manufacturing, she is currently responsible for getting sustainable manufacturing embedded across the company's operations. So, Helen, if you will.
Hello, welcome, and thank you for letting me to spend a few minutes just sharing some of Unilever's journey. Thank you for the introduction, and really great to see what the Inca Group are doing in this space and other like-minded companies. So at Unilever, we are a consumer manufacturing goods company. We sell brands right across home care, personal care, and foods business, things like Magnum, Dove, Domestos, Persil, Ben & Jerry's, Tresemme, and things like that. So We're a large company. We operate in over 70 countries, and we've got around about just under 300 factories globally around the world. So very, very diverse, very complex, and we've been very committed to decarbonising. Do you want to put the next slide on? Okay. You want to just move again? So we've had an ongoing commitment to Unilever. We started our journey probably 10 years ago when we launched the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. And then we were one of the first companies to really sort of bring that out forward about what we need to do, not just on carbon and climate, but on other topics around water and waste, and making sure that we move the world on as well as business and make sustainability commonplace in what we do. And we've been committed to addressing, and you can see there for many reasons, but also we've got an important part that Unilever brings to the table is our consumer. We connect to many, many people around the world every day with our products. And we now see that's a real opportunity about how we help connect, listen to consumers, and really drive that we offer them a portfolio of products that are, consumer environmentally friendly, carbon neutral, and offering to what they want, as well as doing our business in a sustainable way. So as I said, we started 10 years ago on our journey, and we've made great steps to decarbonise. We have been able to make all of our operations be sourced by renewable electricity. No mean feat when we've had to unpick that. In many, many countries, that renewable electricity didn't exist a few years ago, and we've been driving that to get that demand up and making sure that we can get that first step in that journey of decarbonisation, which is renewable electricity. We've also been able to tackle the rest of our carbon footprint. So when we talk about energy, it isn't just about electricity or power. There is the elements of thermal heat, like you have in your house when you use a boiler to heat your hot water, or your radiators, or your air in your house. And because we've got a lot of manufacturing factories, they will produce, or they will need a lot of heat to be able to make and clean the products. So we've also started to have a look at that. And so far we are 70% of our journey of decarbonising our own footprint of our own operations, which is a phenomenal achievement, I think. But the last 30 we've still got to do, and we're committed to do that. And other sort of numbers you can see is it hasn't just been about sort of swapping to renewable or buying our way out of it. We've done it through an efficiency drive, and we've been able to see a 30% reduction in our energy, which is really not only helps the money and the wallet, but it's it really helps contribute to that, to then help drive new technologies to unlock some lower carbon solutions. And we now are around 25 of our factories are carbon neutral at the moment, so not emitting any carbon in the science-based targets definitions, and we're hoping to make that 50 by the end of the year. But this isn't enough. Do you want to, next slide? So a couple of weeks ago, we launched a new climate, water, regenerate nature piece. Our Unilever Sustainable Living Plan was running for 10 years. We're now doing our next approach. What's our next 10 years of focused activities? And even though we've had some phenomenal success, we still haven't been able to really crack that scope 3 area. And I think this is where, we've then had to rethink to be saying, where do we look, not just only get our house in order, but how do we make sure that we use our consumers, we help guide our consumers to sort of pointing towards lower carbon products, as well as how we get that upstream scope 3 to be able to decarbonise. And that's where some of our new kind of values and morals have been saying is that, all emissions matter, not just what we can control. We have to really drive collaboratively to try and unlock solutions here. We must drive absolute carbon reduction. It isn't good enough for a company like ourselves just to say we're going to offset. We must really take carbon out all of that value chain. And we need to use that with our brands. We need to use we need to marry economic and sustainability together to making sure that we hit that sweet spot, both for people, both for planet, both for businesses. Otherwise, we're not going to get a success moving forward. And we need to think differently. We need to work together. We need to collaborate, but we need to look at new carbon removal technologies. We need to look beyond, into nature. We need to have a look at the role of water, biodiversity, livelihoods, all of that, because all of it connects together in an ecosystem. You can't just look at how many carbon tons that we remove. But the first point for us is certainly in the next couple of years, it is to drive more carbon transparency across the chain, so we can get consumers to understand it more. We can get our suppliers, our scope 3, upstream, even our farmers, agriculture, to start talking about this, engaging in this, and then trying to work on that journey to decarbonize. So this was our new policy that we shared a couple of weeks ago, and you'll see in some of our announcements. But what I just wanted very quickly today to dip in to sort of share some of the insights that we've learnt about how we got on with tackling to getting to that 70%, and how are we going to drive towards that 100%. Because we have targets, we've committed that our own operations will be carbon neutral or net emissions, whatever phrase you want to use in that, but have zero carbon by 2030. And we need to carry on with our journey, which is, it's now getting harder and harder. And that's where we sort of reach out for groups like this to be saying, how can we connect together to find solutions that we're all looking for? So as the team has said, the first things first is you need to have first things first, you need to have a target which you need to measure, the chicken and the egg situation, but for sure, you need to be able to clear on what your carbon footprint or your emissions or greenhouse gases are, and measuring that. And that's something together, I think, in a group like the WBCSD, we have to have a look at how we have a standard way of recording that carbon. And then setting those targets really, really help sort of clarify that direction and ambition. But then what we found in a way to tackle it, we've got our electricity, we've got our thermal needs, we've got our cooling needs as well, that all need energy and therefore have been producing or have been produced from carbon emitting sources. We came up with an approach that we've been using for the last couple of years to try and focus people on where to act first. So the first thing that we've always said is understand what your needs are, understand your power, your heat, your cooling, and understand how you generate that or how you buy that, because you can sometimes procure steam and of course electricity is often we're buying from national grids if we're not sourcing through our own kind of wind power sites. And getting that understanding, you can then start to see what you need to tackle. And then the first things first across any of the sustainability subjects that we can talk about and work towards in Unilever is don't waste it. Don't overconsume, don't overuse, and particularly in carbon area is around energy efficiency. Look to where you can drive that down. So anything that you can save not only saves you money, but of course will save you carbon and start to help the planet. And as you see that we've taken almost a third out of our energy consumption, whilst we've grown in our productions, in our volumes, etc. So, that really, really helps the planet. And that's something simply that anyone can do, whether it's consumers, whether it's manufacturers, whether it's suppliers. That's something that we can all do to try and help. Once you've kind of right-sized that, and made sure that you've not been using steam to be able to generate hot water, or you've not been overheating something and really driving that intensity down, we've then started on a journey where we've been converting to renewables. So taking out those carbon fossil fueled sources. So coal, we've been removing coal from our organisation. So we are 1 or 2 sites now. We have a commitment in the next couple of months that we will not be using direct coal in any of our operations, and we're on target to deliver that. And then we've been also really, starting to convert, coming away from natural gas, coming away from diesel and fuel oils, and starting to put biomass, solar, wind, and of course the renewable electricity really helps. But in that thermal space, we've been really starting to drive in that quite hard to be able to get that carbon number down. And then we've been then looking into new innovation, new innovative ways, technologies about how to unlock that gap, because we know that not everything that we need in our energy needs is being met at the moment. And this is where together we have to then start to look at how do we unlock that both in our operations, but also helping that upstream scope 3 with our suppliers that are also doing the same thing. If you want to move on, next slide. Do you want to move on to the next slide? So what I've got in the last couple of slides just to share is these are some of the areas that we're now exploring into to try and unlock to get that last 30% both in our operations, but also to try and how expand into that scope 3, get more transparency, get people to record their carbon footprints, and then we can then help to try and work on a decarbonisation path. So you can see some of the things that we're looking at. We're playing with hydrogen, carbon capture, solar for steam, etc., natural refrigerants, and of course that decarbonisation that was talked about earlier through the sort of IKEA group. And then the last slide that I wanted to share today is where are we stuck? What's challenging us, and where can we work collaboratively together, and also form a view on. Because we don't have all the answers, and I think collectively that voice is heard more. So I think on the left-hand side, more contentious is kind of waste of energy and sort of the circular economies of the world. Where does that fit in that decarbonisation as an interim or as a solution further down the route? We're starting to struggle with that, and again, I think open it out to the forum here about how do we feel comfortable about that, use that in the right way that doesn't hurt the planet, but also moves us along with other sustainability goals that we've got. Collaboration, renewable energy as a service. How do we get together that, we're looking at mixing of that, renewable steam, renewable hot air then becomes a service rather than just electricity. Those are the things I think we can start to look at, and that will certainly help to decarbonise upstream footprints, and then also into our consumers' households as well. And then to the right-hand side of it is about our carbon transparency. What's the role of carbon tax? What's the role of governments and things like that? How do we drive through policies, advocacy, and things like that to get people to accelerate really what needs to be done? That companies like ourselves and other companies are doing in-house, but really we need to accelerate it further. And then the last comment I would also make is about consumers and value, and getting people to understand and want this and use it, not just in protests that you see around the world with Greta, but how do we get people to act with their money? How do we get people, when they're purchasing their goods, that they're understanding what carbon neutral means? Yes, I want to buy something that has a lower carbon footprint, and I'm choosing that and have the right to choose. And that helps to drive the economies that we need to move forward, as well as helping to drive the planet. So how do we unlock that more, to make sure that it's not just targets we're chasing, but really this is embedded into the way that we live. So hopefully that gave you a snapshot into Unilever and some food for thoughts. And of course, I think we'll touch about some of these things in the Q&A later. But thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Helen. That was really interesting. Yeah, great to see how much has been done, the continuing ambition of the organization, as well as some of the challenges and solutions that you are exploring right now. So yeah, thanks a lot. I think before we move into the perspective from the supply side, in this case, and now we would like to do another Mentimeter. So our first question asked, how ambitious is your organization, and what kind of targets have you committed to? And our second question is really, what is keeping you from fulfilling your ambition? So, what is the biggest barrier to decarbonizing your energy consumption? And, the options raised from, awareness of good technologies or business models. Maybe it's a lack of capital that there is, or maybe you do have the money, but the return on investment is insufficient to get sign-off, or maybe it's a lack of executive management commitment, or even engagement, colleagues of yours. And this is not a question, this is a ranking question. So you have to highlight which one is most important to you, or which one is most hindering for you, to which one is not really a concern for you. I appreciate that. Takes a bit of time. Don't worry about the last few, just follow your guts and, you know, let us know which one springs to mind as, oh, this is definitely my problem. And I'm always struggling with this one. And then we'll get a good insight into the audience and the challenges they're facing. I can see that return on investment is a key thing. So it's awareness. I mean, it's fairly even spread, I would say. Although access to capital doesn't seem to be a huge hurdle for most of us. I'll give it a few more seconds. I think we have it here. So yeah, thank you all for participating in these Mentimeters. It's much appreciated. So yeah, with that, I'd like to hand it over to Marco Gazzino. Marco Gazzino is the head of innovability at NLX, which is NL's energy services business line, dedicated to energy solutions, sort of across the home and industry, electric mobility, and even cities. So Marco, over to you, please.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for inviting. I'm going through a brief presentation starting from who is NLX. At a glance, NLX is one of the business line of Enel. Enel is a multinational utility, vertically integrated in the energy production and electricity production, with a strong focus on sustainability. We have committed on supporting 4 of the out of the SDG of the United Nations, with a focus on climate change, but also on infrastructure developments and so on, in order to have a boost on sustainability. And also Enel is quite active in renewable energy and installation of new additional capacity of renewable power, actually something in between 3 and 4 gigawatts of new capacity per year, which is a world record. There is no one else installing so much additional capacity of renewable power worldwide. The target is to get to 70% of decarbonization of the company by 2025, 60% already in 2022, and fully decarbonized by 2050. In the frame of Enel Group, NLX is a global business line focusing on new products and services. And essentially, we help our customers in decarbonizing themselves and getting access to new energy services, which make it possible for them to have a look to energy and electricity in a different way, also to seize opportunities that are arising from the energy transformation and the energy transition we know. If we move to the next slide, we have a focus on commercial and industrial customers. So how this overall framework is applying to C&I customers. The answer is easy, because it is enough to see what they are looking for. First, some of them need awareness of energy use and purchase. and that's the first pillar, to be effective in the way they know and understand how they use electricity. The second step, the second need they have is how can they optimize the way they buy electricity, and we are still in a place of very common services, but many customers need to start focusing on this in order to get efficiency in the way they use and purchase electricity. Then after having fixed these two areas, suddenly the customer needs to optimize the way they use electricity, and moving forward they need to generate electricity locally, so to have a link to distributed energy resources. And the fifth step of this process is monetizing on energy markets, because as soon as they have energy loads, because they have, for instance, electrified their processes or installed distributed energy resources to produce electricity locally, they have the ability to use these distributed energy resources in order to provide ancillary services to the market to balance the grid. And this is an additional revenue stream they can add in this process and in the way they interact with the energy usage and the electricity. Now to focus on this fifth step, if we move to the next slide, we see the way demand response is a win-win service optimization for customers and for aggregators. Essentially, on one side, you see C&I customers that can provide flexibility to the grid, but they cannot do that by their own, because they need an aggregator which is putting together their loads or distributed energy resources and renewable energy resources in the way the capacity is enough in order to be bid on the energy market to provide balancing services to the grid and flexibility to network operators. NLX is in between, let's say, demand and offer in this market, and make it possible for the customers to bid on the market even very small loads in order to get profit. NLX is the largest demand response player worldwide, with about 7 gigawatts of aggregated capacity, with a presence which is mainly in North America, UK, Italy, and we have started also in Asia Pacific to have a significant presence there. So customers are looking at demand response positively in many parts of the world. If we move to the next slide, we see also two examples in which we can leverage on, let's say, an unconventional load, which is not in principle an electricity load, a direct load, which is in this case putting some phase-changing fluid in fridges in order to increase the thermal capacity of these units. But this made it possible to have an additional DR load. That's quite interesting. So one another practical application of this at the forefront of DR services is getting additional electric capacity in order to provide DR services by adding this thermal capacity inside the fridges. And this really unlocked significant opportunities for customers. And one another example is the CPO as a service project, which made it possible to use the residual power capacity of C&I customers in order to connect to the grid, leveraging on this capacity additional charging stations, which are leveraging on this private power capacity, but to provide EV charging services in a public space. And again, this is quite interesting also because we can also connect to cars and use the batteries of the cars in order to provide the services out of the battery capacity of the car when this is parked, and this is vehicle to grid. If we move to the next slide, we see another way we interact with our customers, which is the circular economy boosting program. We focus essentially on two streams. One is the circular economy scoring, and the other one is the circular economy report. This is the way we help our customers to improve their sustainability profile. And it's essentially starting from, let's say, a circular economy audit, which can be done on customer site or at corporate level. And this is leading to a circular economy report or to a circular economy scoring on specific products. We have applied the left side of this slide on our products as well, of course, and the circular economy report to many customers who wanted to improve their circular economy profile. After this, let's say, audit, they receive a circular economy report with a scoring, which is identifying the way, the level of circularity they have in their processes, and also the way they can improve their circular economy profile by activating different and possible actions in order to improve it. It's very specific, very pragmatic, leading to tangible actions which make it possible for them to have, let's say, a very interesting action plan for circularity. If we move to the next slide, we see an example. We have applied this process to Mitsubishi. And in this example, you see an extract of the circular economy report in which we provide them with some information on corporate and site energy, and also this is certified by RINA in a way which makes it possible for them not only to have an actionable plan, but also a certified result about the level of circularity of their site and their corporate at corporate level as well. This is pretty much all, and I'm looking forward to have an interacting Q&A session and discussion with all of you.
Thank you, Marco. That was great. Very interesting to see, you know, how NLX is innovating and you know, the various roles that the C&I customers can take on sort of within the new energy system. So thanks a lot for that. So we have one more Mentimeter, Paul. So having asked you about your targets and about your barriers, we would now like you to rate your own energy strategy. So we're asking, how advanced is your company's energy strategy? And then we have sort of like 4 metrics which we're asking about. And we would like you to rate each them from 1 to 5. So this relates to data management or reporting or collaboration with stakeholders. And you know, a 1 means you're not doing a whole lot within that particular element or capability, whereas 5 means that you have been developing this element to a high degree. Thank you for those who are participating already. I can see quite a bit of confidence amongst initial responses. I think it's no surprise that the collaboration with external stakeholders such as suppliers and consumers is least advanced, this being sort of the most out of the box and newest way in which businesses need to progress their energy agenda. Well, I'm sure Mariana's having a good look at this and looking to let some of this information drive the session, which will follow. So I think I will wrap it up here and move on to the next section of this webinar, which is the moderated discussion. But before we start talking to the panelists again, Mariana Heinrich, the Director of Energy at the WBCSD, will explain a little bit about integrated energy strategies and how it can help companies achieve financial and environmental objectives. So Mariana, if you could take over from here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rutger, and good morning and good afternoon to all of you, wherever you may be. It was very interesting to see the results there of the Mentimeter. Those generic statements often make it sound very easy. The devil is in the detail, and we will find that out in a moment. So I will spend a couple of minutes talking to you about what does it mean to apply best practice for a company's energy strategy. Over the past year, WBCSD members have, together with us, developed a guideline for an integrated energy strategy. And that is now publicly available on our webpage. What it does is that it helps energy users to develop and implement their own ambitious energy strategy. And it incorporates most of the best practices that we've heard from our speakers today, which is great. The purpose of it is that we're trying to challenge companies. And we're trying to make you rethink how is your company sourcing and consuming energy within its own operations and also across the energy related value chain. So first of all, I'd like to speak about the scope of the energy strategy and what we've seen sort of being best practice with different companies. So we've heard from our speakers today that they are thinking holistically about three things. And I'll talk you through those three strengths. So number one, the speakers are all looking at how they're using energy across the company. So not only focusing on power and renewables, but also looking at how heating and cooling for buildings and industrial processes is an energy use, and also looking at transport, because of course transport of goods and people is equally a use of energy. Number two, how companies are working across all relevant internal stakeholders. So involving the colleagues from sustainability, from procurement, from finance, from legal, and within operations. And number three, how they're looking outside of their own operations. So companies can work a lot with local stakeholders, their supply chain, as well as their customers to improve the business benefits. And that's why we're often actually using the term value chain instead of supply chain, because with value chain, we're really also incorporating the customer angle, as well as the downstream, as well as the upstream part. So if we wanted to define what does it mean to have an integrated energy strategy, that means that it is setting out how to achieve a company's energy-related, financial, as well as environmental objectives, considering all of the energy users for the own operation of the company, as well as the energy-related value chain. So that's everything on the scope. Now, of course, there is more to that that we can see visualized on the next slide as well. So best practice also means having certain key elements in place and continuously developing the company's capability on improving those. So what we can see here is we're looking at different 6 elements that starts with vision and targets. So it's pretty clear by now that a company needs to have a clear vision of a credible target and a strong business case behind that. What is often less well integrated into a company strategy is the governance element. And a strong governance needs to be attached at board level for the energy and climate related risks and opportunities that the companies are facing, and then trickle down into all levels of mid-management so that there's a strong commitment and also strong cross-functional accountability of what needs to be achieved and who's accountable for achieving that. Data collection and management, again, is one of my favorite ones because it often gets left a little bit behind. A robust, granular, and trusted data collection and management needs to provide insight and drive decisions. And that's why it's so important that companies collate all of the data, analyze it, understand it, and then take corrective actions based on that data. And it's a little bit similar actually to what we're seeing with mandatory and voluntary reporting. A lot of companies are doing the mandatory reporting, of course, but not everybody is really excellent in deriving the insights from their reporting and then using it to add value across the company and using it with external stakeholders as well as with internal stakeholders, which is the next element, an element on its own because it is so important, as we've seen actually from all of the speakers today, in how they're communicating with their employees as well as with their supply chain partners and their customers, and prioritizing working with those who have a similar ambition and a similar energy strategy to your own company. And then last but not least, we're coming to solutions, which is the actual implementation. So those energy solutions, may they range from energy efficiency to renewable power, to heating and cooling, to transport, anything that you actively do to reduce energy use, to reduce emissions and swap to low carbon carriers. It's really important that that assessment of those options, it's done not only using financial criteria, but also using environmental and social decision-making criteria. And the biggest opportunity that we found from speaking to all of our members is to coordinate the implementation with other business priorities to really minimize disruption, as well as maximize the opportunity to do things in the right way when you have the opportunity to. And I'm sure you know, as I'm talking, that there's a lot more behind that. So we've put the webpage link onto these slides, and you will, of course, get these at the end of the session. So then you can go on our website and look up a little bit more about all of those details. Now, what is it all for? So the purpose of an integrated energy strategy for any company, with the outlined scopes that I've explained, and also with the capabilities that we think companies should deploy, is twofold. So number one, for companies to respond to the climate emergency, and all of you have mentioned that today. And number two, to maximize on the opportunities from the energy transition in form of new technologies, new business models, and particularly new financing mechanisms. And I think that's why Marco's presentation was really interesting, because of course here it is really good to hear from the suppliers and see how are they thinking and understanding how the energy users are changing their ambition, what do they want to do, and how is the supply side actually reacting to that by offering new solutions into the market that actually get us there. So what does it mean to turn your company into a leading prosumer? The typical journey starts with companies who are looking at energy as an operational expense, and when something gets broken, it is simply replaced by the cheapest that is alike. Now, many companies are moving to become a more active consumer, so looking at how can they reduce energy efficiency, and when things get broken, how do they fix it with a better solution, with a lower carbon solution, with a low cost solution that also gives them business benefits. And hence they're looking for a broader choice of suppliers, of products and services that they want to source from. Going to the leading prosumer, that company has an integrated energy strategy, looks at the full suite of technologies and business models to manage the decarbonization of the business and actively use the opportunities that the energy market specifically offers them in doing so. And they also work strongly with their supply chain, with their customers and local stakeholders together. And often what we mean with collaboration is that you basically have to put yourself out there and talk to all of those people, understand what is driving them, what is their objectives, how does that match to your objectives, and then finding the common denominator between both of the companies to see like what can you do together, and that is usually hard. We have a small chapter written up on that as well, outlining all of the problems of why collaboration is difficult. But what we heard from our speakers today is that it is yielding its reward in the end. So that's why we think it is worth the effort. So with that, I'd like to go into a panel discussion with Helen, Carol, and Marco. And I see that most of you will probably have found the chat function by now. If not, there is a little button at the bottom of the Zoom functionality called chat. If you click on that, then a chat window will open up, and that will enable you to type in questions. So you can either send them to everyone, or you can also just send them to myself, and I will read them and make sure that we cover them. If there's too many, then maybe we cannot cover all in today's session, but then we will pick them up separately. So please feel free to start using the chat function if you have particular questions for Helen, Carol, or Marco on what they have talked about. So I'd like to kick it off with a question to Carol. Looking at the first element that I've been outlining, what does it mean to have an integrated energy strategy? And I know IKEA has very different business units, and you're part of one of them. And I think in the pre-chat that we had before today, you told me that IKEA is working cross-functionally to align those different businesses and what they're doing. What were the biggest challenges when you first started putting together these working groups, either being like technical, cultural, language barriers? Could you explain a little bit about that? I think you're on mute, Carol.
Yeah, I'm now.
Yeah.
Cool. I think the first, challenge and as well interesting journey that you are going through is you are bringing people who are speaking a bit different language from different parts of organizations. Some of them are talking megawatt hours, some of them are talking in CO2, some of them are talking in the money values, and they have different a bit perspective on looking on the energy consumption within your organization as well, which brings many opportunities, but as well at the beginning like challenges on how to steer the discussion and how to secure that you have all the relevant stakeholders around the table and keep their interest within the topic. So how to find the spot that is interesting for each of the function and why they are part of it. So I think that when we've been working with energy working group that we have representatives from different functions, it is interesting dynamic, and I think this is big learning as well for integrated energy strategy. Don't look on it as developing piece of paper which you will develop and it will be perfect and is done. It's actually a journey that you develop better quality of data, better indicators, you develop the competence within your organization, as well as you are building the synergies. And I think when we look on the all systemic change, you have the same challenge. It's like, how do you build narrative, bringing the people from different backgrounds and so on. So I think that's the learning that I would say it's good to be conscious about, that you are bringing people who might have different approach towards the same topic. So try to understand where they are coming from with their background and how to align the language. And the interesting part is as well, if you are missing one person with one skill, it's already your group is becoming weaker. So if you don't have a person from finance, it will be very difficult for you to progress. And that's as well the learning that we can see, that it needs to be technical background, environmental background, financial background, and social background within the some of the parts, especially when it comes to competence development.
Yeah, interesting, Carol. That is exactly what we also heard from a number of other companies who have either successfully brought these working groups together, but often it's taking them a long time because often it is not obvious immediately to a lot of people why should they be part of this. So makes sense. And let me stay with you for a second because there's one thing that we haven't spoken actually today about, but I know that the Inca group has been looking at how do you specifically install heat pumps within the businesses. And I know that you made a lot of efforts to collaborate with external organizations, and particularly the Heat Pump Association. Can you tell us what was the challenge? Then how did you find the next steps of action, and what was the results that you actually gained?
Yeah, I think the interesting part when we started the heating topic and heating and cooling and which technologies are the best one or the most suitable, what we noticed as the first part that the solutions are coming very much locally, even like within the different countries, and then to understand what is happening, why there is no, for example, one solution that fits all, and then we see that, for example, heat pumps, we call it with one name, is a heat pump, but then it contains many different elements which are put together. And then you have many components that are needed to secure well-functioning system. So first step that what we have done, it was to, first of all, collect all the internal knowledge that we have. So we did internal workshops with the people from technical departments from different parts of the world to see what are the learnings and then what are the common challenges, the biggest challenges that we see to move forward. And then when we define these internal challenges which we see, then we invited as well external partners and companies working with these topics who are like, for whom this is like the bread and butter development of these technologies. So to show the challenges that we see, and then what we've seen that many of these challenges were actually not such a big challenges from the manufacturers, for example, perspective. And the major issue was this collaboration of the different businesses to assemble the heat pump and put it together. So I think that's the learnings which we have from that activity. First of all, look internally because you have for sure many people who know something already on the topic that we are trying to solve. Second one, engage externally to go beyond your business as well, or business unit to scale up.
That's great. I love that example because it shows how instead of like staying within your own area and your own company, you went out there and you asked people, and you basically asked for those specialists for help where it is not the natural competitive advantage of Inca Group to know all of the technical details about heat pumps, but others of course do. So the collaboration really gained additional benefits. I see that we have a number of questions already in the chat, and I will pick them up in a second. And I think a couple of them are really interesting for Marco and Helen. But before that, Helen, I know that Unilever is already using biomass in, I think, more than 40 sites across the globe. And I think half a dozen are using steam from third parties using renewables. And you've elaborated a little bit about that earlier as well. How did you find the collaboration aspect on particularly those third-party agreements, like trying to work with others together on how you get that biomass or steam sourced in the quality that you need for your operation?
Yeah, It's a great question, and I think the first thing that comes to mind is it is tough. It doesn't come easy. Both internal collaboration as well, because you have to, connect to all sorts of different functions to making sure that you can get that sweet spot of a contract, I guess. If you are going sort of external rather than sort of picking it all together and sewing it together yourselves. And then externally as well, we've spent a lot with a lot of local players that are geographically located to our sites. But what we're now finding is we're trying to reach out to more regional and, dare I say, even global players that trying to reach out to those kind of suppliers that can stitch supply chains together, which then ends up with a renewable energy contract at the end. Electricity for sure has been the prime example through sort of RE100 that we've had to work very hard with kind of collaborating externally. But I think for biomass, it started locally, I'm afraid. It didn't start globally. And what we're now trying to take it out there, and we're trying to reach out, and this is kind of the phase that we're in at the moment, is that how do we get companies to work together, to serve us for more than one location or more than 5 locations. And these are the dialogues that we're having at the moment, and creating those kind of frameworks of what that approach looks like, making sure that people are at the start of the journey when you're saying, right, we need to have a look at this, how to flip over to biomass or some kind of biosource that's available in that area. It's not always the mass that you need. It could be gas, it could be liquid, depending on what's available. And we're having to connect to many parties. Have we got the perfect model? Absolutely not. And I think this is where I think just talking about it and making sure that it's being aware that we have a policy about sustainably sourcing biomass, because we have to be very careful. Biomass isn't the perfect solution. I would call it an interim or a transition solution. And in our business cases, we're very mindful to say that it's here for maybe 10, 15 plus years, and we need to have something else coming to replace it. But we have to kind of work to making sure that we're not creating another problem further down the line by just sort of taking land to produce biomass to then burn that, and that's sort of destabilizing some of the other good work that we're doing. So, in short, it's still tough, and I think it's the more we talk about it and the more we framework it out and have models that we can share, and more companies see that there is a demand that we want to use renewable energy as a service, that then starts that virtuous circle to sort of snowball up to more and more.
Yeah. That's exactly, I think, what the approach is that many companies start locally, but then of course, as you're being successful there, how do you achieve the scale up? And that's where then the value chain collaboration comes in as such a big role. But what you said there, one of your last words was renewable as a service, which perfectly leads to one of the questions that I'd like to put to Marco, which was posted in the chat from Aizu. So she is wondering, how do companies deal with situations when you have a longer payback period than maybe what your company would usually sign up to, or in general unfavorable financing options? And how do you then fund these type of projects and get the internal buy-in? And I think the most prominent words that currently come to mind for those questions are renewable as a service, or actually energy or heat as a service. And I think Enel is thinking about, or maybe even offering already, you tell me, some business models that are looking at the as a service, and how do you then overcome that payback problem?
Yeah, there are actually different answers to this question, because it depends pretty much on the country and the market you are thinking about. Because if you are in the United States or in North America in general, the answer is maybe that you can go to a PPA model and make a long-term agreement for renewable energy supply with very large customers. This way usually bankability of the project is quite solid, and it's possible to reduce the cost of electricity significantly. And PPA is quite popular in North America. It's getting popular in Europe as well. But really depends on the market. And one another option in order to reduce the payback period of the investment in renewable energy is also to integrate them with battery storage, or adding on top of the renewable energy project additional revenue streams. This is what we are doing very actively in many countries, and this was one of the focus of my presentation. Demand response is one of the answers, because as soon as you can connect some of the loads of a site to the grid, for the customer this is an additional revenue stream. They can get essentially for free, because the load is provided to the grid when the customer is not using it. Or even demand response on heat pumps. We mentioned heat pumps in the discussion a few minutes ago. Heat pumps are an electric load that can be made available to the grid for providing flexibility, and the grid is paying in order to get this service, and the customer is getting this additional revenue stream. All of these, as soon as you go and have a look to what you can do in a site in an holistic way, as soon as you do that, is quite easy to get a benefit which is much better than the one you can get by having a look to the single pieces of different interventions. If you look to renewables, energy efficiency, additional energy services in a way which is a little bit siloed, this lead to lower result and lower benefits for the customer, and also for the electric system. I think the holistic way make it possible to optimize everything in a way which is very market and customer sensitive. There is no one answer that can be given, but side by side and depending on the market, you can optimize everything in a way which is very effective. Usually the payback period is lower, overall is lower than the one you can get from just installing a PV plant.
Wonderful. Yes, I think that your answer captured that correctly. There is, it's not going to be easy, but you know, we're going to find more and more solutions. Now we have 2 minutes left, so I would like to close with a question that Ella from PwC has asked, and I'll ask all of the panelists to give me just a one-line answer. So she's wondering what are the key partnerships needed for decarbonization across your respective value chains. So if you could give me one key word, or what is the one key partnership that would make a massive difference for decarbonization in your value chains. Maybe I'm putting Carol on the spot to go first.
Yeah, I think it's first, it depends which sector you are. So you need to understand your upstream and downstream, where is the biggest impact. And based on that, actually, you are defining what is the key collaboration in upstream and downstream. And for us, the part is definitely the energy use in production. That's the collaboration then with Inter-IKEA group that is responsible for sourcing the products. And then the upstream is connected to collaboration on sustainable mobility options within the cities. And then it's, yeah, that's something what we are still looking. Definitely one of them is EV charging stations, but then you need to look what is as well beyond to change this ecosystem. And this is still under exploration for us.
Thank you, Carol. That was a brilliant explanation, a little bit more than one sentence, but that's okay. Helen, over to you.
Yeah, I would say that this is more of a what than a who and it's around carbon transparency, carbon visibility, and having a standard way of measuring what your greenhouse gas footprint is, because today we all speak a different language. And until we have something like that, it's very difficult for us to then have a baseline, and carbon reporting, carbon financing, carbon account, whatever the right word is. I don't know what we need to finalize on. That is where we need to collaborate the most. And then once you've got that visibility, the how we solve it, I think, will be then becoming very clear.
Okay, thank you. And Marco, I guess from your point of view, you might say phase out of coal in terms of Enel's electricity generation portfolio.
Yeah, that's one strong commitment we have, alongside with the renewable power and additional capacity we add every year. But let me say that when it comes to NLX and our specific business related to NLX, I think it's very difficult to identify one spot which fix everything. I think it's very important to have strong relationships with suppliers, because if you want to implement a solid circular economy story, it's important to start from suppliers. And also customers, of course, are the key, because commitment in decarbonization is the starting point for everything.
Yeah. Wonderful, thank you. And then I will close this discussion with a sentence that Carol said to me in the start, in the preparation, and she said, business is not there to wait for solutions. So with that, back over to you, Rutger.
Thank you, Mariana. And thank you everybody for that discussion. It was great that you were all so kind to take the time and share your thoughts and insights and experience driving journey within your companies. So yeah, we'll very much appreciate it. Peter, if you could go to the next slide, please. I'll be very brief, conscious of the fact that we are over time, but I do hope everybody's been sort of inspired and motivated to progress their own energy strategy. So do have a look at our website. It's a very elaborate one. There's plenty of information in there. So see how it compares to your own journey. And for those who want to be actively involved with sort of the next work streams within integrated energy strategies, absolutely do consider joining the Energy Solutions Project and the IES workstream in particular. We got a bunch of exciting stuff in the works. Potentially a guide for executive management to continue that commitment that you need to build your energy strategy, or maybe some more capacity building workshops. And obviously we will issue key takeaways as well as the slides and the recordings. So those will all be sent to your inbox. So thanks again, and have a very good Monday.